This is The Unhurried Mama, a space for mothers who are tired of holding it together and ready to actually land. I'm Michelle, and I'm a mom, a writer, but not an expert. I'm here as someone still figuring this out, doing it my way, and refusing to pretend it's perfect. Every week, we sit together and untangle one piece of the parenting knot. No tips or fixes, I promise. Just the mess, the science, and the path back to you. So pour yourself some coffee or tea, close the door, and let's begin right where we are. I was 9 years old, living in Saskatchewan. My parents' friends were visiting from out of town. While my parents were busy working at their restaurant, I tagged along with the friends to a Pow Wow happening inside the ice rink. I remember it feeling like a treat. All the vendors and colors and the magic of being handed briefly to adults who want to make you happy. We walked through the market, past tables lined with handmade goods, and something grabbed my attention. A little play ring, sitting in a foam slot, in a plain box, on a table full of jewelry. I picked it up, tried it on my finger. It caught the light just enough to make me feel like a princess. I took it off and put it back. Then I asked her to buy it for me. The way children ask before they've learned to manage what they want in front of others, before they've learned to shrink the ask down to something more acceptable, or swallow it entirely. I saw something that sparkled, and I said so. She said yes. It was probably 50 cents. I slipped it on my finger, thanked her, and went about my day, happy as ever. That night was the only night my mother ever laid a hand on me. She made me apologize, made me say I was wrong, made me give the ring back. And somewhere in my 9-year-old body, without words for it, without any way to name what was being written into me, I learned. Wanting makes you vulnerable. Asking makes it worse. That saying out loud you think you deserve something sparkly is the most dangerous thing of all. And clearly, you don't. When I think about that little girl now, I feel grief, a soft, aching sorrow for her. She wasn't being greedy, nor was she in the wrong. She was just a child who saw something that sparkled and was brave enough to say so, who had a voice and used it. I want to go back and sit beside her, put my arm around her, and tell her she was right to ask. My mother wasn't being cruel. She was just doing what she knew, what her own childhood had written into her body before she had words for it either. It wasn't some arbitrary rule. It was her survival logic. Don't take what you haven't earned. Don't draw attention. Don't let wanting make you vulnerable. In the world she came from, that lesson kept you safe. But it didn't stop there. It traveled. It moved through her hands and into mine, and settled somewhere in my gut, where it lived for decades as a low, relentless hum. You are not allowed to want. You are not allowed to ask. And you are certainly not allowed to receive until you have earned every last bit of it. This is what I mean when I talk about a blueprint. Last week, I told you that children are born sovereign, living in their own frequency, connected to their own knowing. This is the story of what interrupted that for me, and maybe for you. I can't ask you to look at what was handed to you without showing you what I found when I looked at mine. Your blueprint isn't the story you've smoothed over and contextualized and learned to tell at dinner parties without your voice catching. The one that ends with, "But they did their best." And while that's true, it's also not the whole truth. Your blueprint is the story your body learned, the one that is triggered in your stomach when your child cries and you feel the old script kick in. Feelings are inconvenient. Toughen up. You're fine. Before you've even decided to think it. The one that shows up in the sharp word you hate hearing yourself say. It shows up automatically, and it was just handed to you so early, you forgot to question whether you wanted to keep it. Brené Brown says, we can't change what we don't name. Think about the mom who snaps at her kid for crying at the dinner table and doesn't know why she feels so much rage about tears until she remembers that tears weren't allowed where she came from. I was that mom. Just a different table, different tears, different script. And I tried, fiercely, with determination, to parent differently before I had figured out any of this. I kept finding the old patterns underneath my new intentions, like roots under fresh pavement, cracking through every time. Until I stopped trying to repave and started asking what was underneath. The naming isn't about blame. It's not about making your parents wrong or rewriting your childhood into something cleaner than it was. It's about seeing the thread, fine as silk, strong as wire, and understanding where it came from so you can decide consciously whether to keep pulling it through. I chose to put it down. Not all at once, of course, and it hasn't always been done with grace. But I chose it. And sometimes that meant deciding which parts of the inheritance I was willing to stay fluent in. I spoke Mandarin to my daughter for the first 2 to 3 years of her life. Everyone said I should, that it would be a waste not to, that I'd regret it if I didn't give her the language while she was still young enough to absorb it without trying. So I did, because that's what you do when you're still living at everyone else's pace. You take the advice, you follow the shoulds, you override the thing in your body that keeps clearing its throat. That signal was saying, this doesn't feel like mine anymore. And I think I already knew why. My mother tongue and the wounds of my childhood were not separate things. They were woven with the same fabric. The ring, the printing shop, where I learned that love required me to perform. The particular way love is displayed in that culture. Conditional, wrapped in fear of what other people would think, seeping through the very language itself. I wanted to parent towards something real, and I couldn't find my footing in a language that kept pulling me back. The words I needed weren't there, or if they were, I couldn't find them beneath everything else my body had learned to feel inside that language. So gradually, without a single conscious decision, I let it go. The way you stop calling someone back until one day you realize you haven't spoken in years, and the silence has become its own kind of answer. For a long time, I told myself it was circumstance. Life got busy. There wasn't anyone to practice with. All of that was true enough to be convincing. But the more honest thing is this. I didn't want to stay close to a language that lived in the same body as the wounding. Staying fluent meant staying connected. And I wasn't ready to be connected to something that had cut such deep grooves in me before I knew what was happening. I lost a thread back to myself in that, the part of me that existed before any of it took hold. I'm still counting that cost. And yet, what I kept was the part that knew how to sit in an ice cream parlor and just be. The part that hadn't forgotten yet. My dad is a good, honest, and loyal man. I want you to know that before I tell you this story. He loves his grandchildren with intensity, the kind that shows up as vigilance, as high standards, and the belief that love means preparing you for a world that will not be gentle with you if you don't know how to behave in it. That's a man who survived things by being sharp and careful and above reproach, and who wanted to hand that survival to the people he loved. We were all on a trip to Germany together and visited an ice cream parlor one afternoon after some sightseeing. It was a place with soft couches and sticky tables and the comfortable buzz of other families around us. My daughter had melted into the sofa, one foot tucked underneath her, boneless, completely at home in her own body. My dad's hand moved fast, firm, sharp. He pressed her foot down. He leaned toward me and said it in Mandarin, low enough that only I could hear. We don't want to be the family everyone looks at and thinks, what a disgrace. Kids these days, no manners. You can put your feet up at home, but not here. 3 generations in one ice cream parlor, his hand on her foot, my eyes on both of them. I watched my daughter's face. She was confused at first. Then something cooled behind her eyes. She didn't make a scene. She just went somewhere slightly unreachable. I heard you, and I have thoughts, and none of them are safe to say right now. She didn't have anywhere to put it yet. And what had just landed in her body was this. How you appear matters more than how you feel. Being received as good matters more than being known as real. I recognized it immediately. I had grown up inside it. And in that quiet aside, in the language he chose deliberately so only I could hear, I think he believed I was still on his side, that I was still the daughter who understood the rule and would enforce it. For him, respect meant obedience. Love meant protection from shame, not permission. And in that moment, sitting in the ice cream parlor, I saw it so clearly. This wasn't about my daughter's foot. This was about belonging, about being the kind of family that doesn't draw judgment, about a man who had learned, long before I was born, that the way to stay safe was to never give anyone a reason to look at you sideways. I didn't correct him in the moment. That's not the work. Making someone wrong in front of everyone, winning the argument, or proving the point. That's just the wound moving. Same energy, different target. Later, I sat with the kids and we talked about what had happened. We didn't make him wrong. I explained that Grandpa was raised in a world where saving face often mattered more than naming the ache, where respect meant silence, where love was protection from shame, not permission to be fully, messily, beautifully yourself. He's not trying to be unkind, I told them. He just learned a different definition of respect. My daughter listened. She nodded slowly, the way children nod when something lands in a place deeper than understanding, when it settles into the body rather than just the mind. That careful conversation was its own kind of interruption. We ended a cycle without humiliating the person who taught it. My dad asked me once, hesitantly, half bracing for the answer, "Was your childhood really so bad that you need to do everything differently? His voice showed no sign of anger, but it was uncertain. Maybe even a little tender in the way that grief is tender when it doesn't know what to do with itself. Underneath it, I didn't hear judgment. I heard a father asking the question he had been wondering for years. Did I fail you? I said, no. You did the best you could with what you had, and now I get to do the same, with more tools and more understanding. He looked at me, a long, deliberate nod of someone receiving something they weren't expecting and finding it true anyway. After a pause that had some weight in it, he smiled and went back to his tea. I had the sense he'd be sitting with that long after we said goodnight. And I want to be honest, that conversation took years to find its way to me. It didn't happen because I was ready. It happened because he asked, and something in me finally had words. To the mothers in the middle of this, the ones doing the work, making the changes, choosing differently, and still catching themselves mid-sentence with their mother's words in their mouth. You can love the people who handed you the blueprint. See them clearly, grieve what they couldn't give you, understand what shaped them, and still choose to put it down. Those things can live in the same breath. That's just what it looks like to do this work with your eyes and your heart open at the same time. I want to be clear that I don't always get to that conversation. Sometimes I go to bed still tangled in it. Sometimes the grace arrives a week late, or even months later. The choosing isn't always clean. Your parents did the best they could with what they had. So did theirs. The chain goes back further than any of us can see. And for some of us, their best still left marks that take a long time to name and heal. That can be true too. This isn't about excusing what happened. It's about deciding what you carry forward. When the work feels heavy, I think about my kids. Not now, but later, when they're grown, maybe with families of their own, sitting across from their children at a sticky table somewhere, in a moment that slips by without asking permission to matter. And I imagine them, unhurried, moving at their own pace, at home in themselves. They will have struggled. I gave them plenty to work with. They'll have their own things to unlearn, their own threads to name and put down. But they'll have language for the unlearning, not as something they have to stumble onto alone at 30 years old, wondering why nothing's sticking. They'll have watched someone decide to look at what they were handed and choose differently. Every repair I made, the ones that worked, the ones that were clumsy, the ones where I got half right and had to try again, those were evidence that love doesn't leave when things go sideways, that you can break down and return. And maybe the most important thing of all, the thing I needed someone to hand me and no one did, that the story your parents started isn't the one you're finished writing, that the weight of what you were handed doesn't have to be the shape of what you pass on. My daughter, at 9, led me through a breath in the kitchen, without a script or prompting, because she still knew how. She put her small hands on my arms and said, "Just breathe, Mama," with a kind of certainty that only lives in a body that hasn't been talked out of its knowing yet. I stood there in my own kitchen, and I let my 9-year-old teach me. My son, watching from nearby, tucked that moment into his body. My daughter, at 11 years old, walked down a hallway 3 times and came back, and showed up the next morning to tell the truth about herself before anyone asked. I don't need to see the end of it. I just need to keep choosing. I want to leave you with something small this week. Just a question and a permission. What did love sound like in the home you grew up in? I mean the unedited version, not the story you've made sense of. What shows up in your body before your mind has a chance to intervene? What was written there before you had words for it? Just let it surface. Let it come up without rushing to explain it or smooth it into something more manageable. It just needs to be seen. Because you can't put down what you haven't looked at yet. You are allowed to put it down. Whatever was handed to you, the lesson that wanting is dangerous, that asking is worse, that love is available only after you've made yourself worth it. You are allowed to set it on the table, look at it clearly, and say, this stops here. Setting it down doesn't make the people who gave it to you wrong for surviving the way they did. It just means you get to choose what travels forward. Next week, we're going all the way to the beginning, long before this podcast, before I had any understanding of what was happening inside me. I want to tell you about another bathroom story and the moment I understood that something in my life had to fundamentally change, or I was going to lose them. That moment is where this season began. It's also where I began. The version of me who had to lose herself before any of this could come through her. I want you to hear it so that you know that none of the healing, this podcast, the framework, and the book that's coming existed before that bathroom floor. It all grew from there. If you saw a part of yourself in this episode, send it to a mama who is trying to parent differently, but keeps finding the old patterns underneath her new intentions. Tell her she's not failing. She's just found the root. For weekly show notes and free meditations, subscribe on Substack. The link is in the episode description. And if you want to go even deeper, I'm looking for early readers for the book I'm writing. That link is there too. Until next time, you're the one who decided to look